Okay, hello. I'm Peter Holland with BenchScore, and I am very excited. We've got a super opportunity today to have a thought leader conversation with Elder Gizdoff from Basking Company, and we can hear a little bit more about that in a minute, and certainly hear more about Elder's experience and the work they're doing. But I think we all know that it's the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times. Well, we certainly do. And I think corporate real estate people have been challenged more than ever. And we're all looking for insights, actionable ideas, paths forward to meet some of the challenges that have been visited upon us. And of course, it's on society at whole, but particularly the consequences of COVID-19 have cascaded through and down onto corporate real estate. And we're looking for answers that are challenging, and hopefully we can help you find some today. So we're looking forward to the conversation. So welcome, and share with us a little bit about why we think that your background is going to be interesting. So go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, thanks so much, Peter. So I think, first of all, maybe a couple words about Basking. And what we do is we are providing workplace occupancy analytics for corporate real estate users, right? So working with companies globally to help them to understand how their offices are used, how they're visited, what's the space, utilization rates, and all these metrics can be provided in real time. And so obviously, from our perspective, these are, so of course, these are challenging times, but also an exciting opportunity for the industry to transition to more data-driven way of working. And I think it's something that is historical. What we're witnessing, the change obviously is extraordinary in terms of how the industry has to adapt to the flexibility demands from the employees. Employees have a way more opportunities now to actually work the way they want to. So yeah, lots of changes, lots of interesting trends. I think there's a lot of things to unpack here.
Okay, well, let's get into it. I think you're quite correct. Change and challenges lead to opportunity. And
exactly.
For those who are willing to meet the moment and exploit it, it's an extraordinary time. So maybe that would be a good way to position this call as to think of moving forward and what kinds of technology, what kinds of re-engineering processes, what kinds of organizational structures. We're thinking about all these kinds of questions. But let's just start with a couple things at almost a macro level. But as we all know in corporate real estate, that corporate real estate has long aspired to have what's always been called the seat at the table. Bring to their gravitas and their expertise, be the maven within the company on corporate real estate, and be respected and be listened to. So as never before, companies are deliberating these issues, and they're not being deliberated at the level of corporate real estate. It's the CEO, the CFO, it's even the board, right? So this is the chance. What are you seeing as these issues are being discussed in your clients? And I may have some observations. What are some of the broad patterns, the trends, the anomalies, But what are some things that you see from the 35,000 foot level, if you will?
Yeah. Well, I can talk about what we're seeing, what we're talking about with our customers and prospects, and I think certainly this drive for more flexibility, and it's coming from the employees, right? So companies need to adapt to these requests for more power for employees to decide on how to work, when to visit the office, and of course this is coming from the work from home adoption that was forced, now work from anywhere adoption that is we're witnessing right now. And so I think the fact that the companies need to adapt to flexibility is, of course, it's a lot of work, right? It's a lot of change, but it's also an opportunity for to be more effective, for real estate to actually have this seat at the table. Real estate leaders can actually deliver cost savings that the CFOs are looking for. So this is a huge opportunity. And then going forward, flexibility creates a lot of uncertainty, and uncertainty is specifically on when employees will come to office, how they're going to use the space. And so solving this this challenge, adapting to this uncertainty is a big task, it's a big challenge, but it's possible with new technologies. And so this new requests, new needs, new demands are meeting with the solutions at exactly at the perfect time, right? So we actually had the technology to solve all these problems before. Pre-COVID, we had this technology, but now that there's demand from the market, we can actually deliver this solution to the industry and get the benefits, both for the companies and for the employees. So the trend, the flexibility, meaning creating this uncertainty, is actually producing the benefits for both sides. And so I think when we talk about corporate real estate now, we also need to think about sort of supply and demand side, almost, right? Because it used to be that the demand for office space was fixed. So 9 to 5 workday, you know exactly when employees are coming, when they're leaving, and you can plan your footprint accordingly. You can adjust to have maybe to create some flexibility, but still you have a lot of buffer. Pre-COVID, we all know that about 40% of the space was underutilized, so it was sitting empty, and companies were, you know, kind of able to afford this, I guess. But now it's just right there. It's an opportunity that you can take, right?
Yeah,
so,
right. The whole thing is kind of blown open, if you will. And the technology has certainly enabled it, but it's going to be very interesting to see if technology and the kinds of technology that's available to the corporate real estate world will accelerate now and even deliver more solutions than we know about today, right? So companies have recognized, but they've wrestled with being able to deliver data-informed decisions, data-centric decisions. That's coming together. Talk a little bit about that data, and it's interesting. This is curious about this. Has this identified gaps, and are there leaders and laggards? Is there a bifurcation between the top tier companies that are really wrestling with this and coming up with solutions using data, using, for example, RefineRE or bench score data, and using basking data, or others? Certainly, there's other places that can aggregate data and use it. But talk a little bit about this kind of gaps, and if what you're seeing.
That's a great question. And so we're seeing, also working together with RefineRE, we're seeing that technology companies obviously are at the forefront of the adoption. They were in it even before. Consulting, all data-driven verticals. We're talking about pharma. So companies that have to operate with data as part of their main product, right? The main output. They already are looking, or they were already in the process of adopting data-driven solutions, technical solutions for real estate function, right? Verticals that are not really there, you know, they're lagging for sure. There's also a question of what the infrastructure, what kind of infrastructure you have to actually adopt new technology, right? And the company's culture is another big factor for this adoption. Some companies are just already used to being to be more remote, to use the remote workplace technology, use Slack, use Microsoft Teams to actually solve business problems, right? And big part of this is also documenting processes. So it's actually going to, the more you are you're adopting flexible workplace, the more you're adopting remote workplace practices, the more you have to document things. You have to actually have some written policies or easily some onboarding practices that allow employees to actually easily access the data they need to work, right? So this is going to be just the flywheel of technical adoption.
Yes, that's a good term. It's each company is different, right? I always said each company is idiosyncratic, and it depends, as you would say, culture, geography certainly can play a significant role. We all know there's a vast difference between how an office might operate in Bangalore or Hyderabad as compared to Austin, Texas, right? So there are certain norms, cultural norms. And there's also there's quite an imprimatur from the CEO. We've seen a lot of this, right? So you see someone like a Jamie Dimon, right? So you see these leaders that have a large presence, almost by executive fiat, saying people will be in the office or people will work from home, or we're going to be flexible, and then companies follow, based on those beliefs. So I would suspect that corporate real estate leaders are being asked for data and are being asked questions that they hadn't been ever prepared to answer. And there's probably some scrambling going on, and they're looking for, I think in many cases, third parties to help them come up with those solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we talk about this drive for flexibility and transition to this state, we need to think about the ecosystem, the whole industry, right? And it's not just about occupiers. It's also about landlords who are they need to help with this transition. It's about advisors. It's about software vendors, tech companies that they need to enable this transition with solutions, right? And so, I think this is the whole ecosystem is now focused on moving to this flexible workplace world, enabling it with data, enabling with technical solutions.
Yeah, I like that notion of the ecosystem, and I think that's important because it is in fact a complex organism, and there's the external ecosystem. So there's this universe of technology enablement, and then you have these consultants, brokerage, the integrators, advisors. There's a wealth, and then you have an internal ecosystem comprised of human resources and information technology, and the corporate real estate, and it can even involve something like a tax department, for example, right? Because I've heard of several instances where employees were working in state A, but they had previously worked in state B. Well, state A, even though they're working at home, is interested in getting their share of the income tax for their the complexity has expanded exponentially. And it's more complex. So I think there is something quite heartening in that corporate real estate leaders, historically been very transaction based, right? A lot of them were promoted. This was my case because they were really good at buying and selling buildings and really good at negotiating leases and driving down costs. But it almost demands a Renaissance person now. Talk a little bit about that. Who are you seeing in some of these and you also mentioned something quite important, but it's integrating with the landlord participating in this, so it's not a
Yes.
passive role. But
Yeah.
do you have any observations that would be interesting to people on
Yeah.
the successful corporate real estate person and some
Well,
characteristics
maybe
for them?
before we get this
Yeah,
question, I think if we come back to the previous one where we talk about the gaps, right?
yeah,
So actually,
yeah.
the gaps in terms of technology adoption can be so you can find the solution by working with the rest of the ecosystem and landlords. For occupiers, the obvious ally partner is a landlord, right? So landlords, what we're seeing now, and I'm sure you're seeing that too, landlords are now very active in terms of adopting new technology so that they can offer it to their tenants, right? So you look at RXR in New York creating the RxWell solution, essentially helping tenants to get the technology they need to understand the space utilization, to understand the environment conditions in the offices they rent from RxR, but also looking further, right, outside of the property. So, and that's just one example. We're looking at landlords in Europe also developing technology for their tenants, and they actually investing in this quite a lot of funds, right? So this is an opportunity for an occupier, for a tenant, to actually leverage their position to get the help they need. So yeah, this is going to what I believe is that it's going to jumpstart this adoption heavily, right? So yeah, and so coming back to the question about the role or the personality of a corporate real estate professional, I think, well, it's almost like what we're seeing now. There's sort of a new title, right? The head of workplace strategy, and I think this is reflecting the change. The focus is not on real estate that much. Real estate is an enabler of the workplace conditions, right? The productive environment that a company is looking for to provide with employees. And so someone who has the knowledge of that, of the conditions that are required for productivity, someone who has knowledge, of course, of the real estate practices, and someone who is able to create the strategy to deliver this. I think strategic thinking is something that is super important at this stage for this role. And yeah, well, RefineRE is helping with solving these issues, right? So we are helping on our end, but there's a myriad of solutions, technical solutions that are out there on the market to provide this help, but you need to make sense of it. You need to be able to actually read this data, make some decisions based on that. And of course, advisors will help, but you still need to decide on your own. So,
right. The data needs to be structured into a taxonomy, and then in a manageable and deliverable and understandable form that's simplified and yields the kind of the outcomes that you would hope for. That's no small matter, because we really want the
that's what RefineRE and us and the rest of the market are trying to help with, of course. But still, right, you need to make decisions based on that, and you need to be able to plan ahead. And that's a big part again. So coming back to the topic we discussed, supply and demand, right?
Yes.
So the uncertainty of when the employees will come, it's not just the hours; it's also the seasons now, right? Or the locations. So you're working from home maybe a couple of days a week. You will be able to choose the when to come. How much time you're going to spend in the office, meaning colleagues, or maybe just working by yourself. But then also you probably will change this attitudes over the season. During different seasons, you might want to spend less time outside or maybe more time in the office, right? So all this different friction points you now need to take into account, and you need to plan your footprint, your leases accordingly, right? So once you have this right sizing done, initial cost savings are achieved, you have this sort of bare bone or very efficient footprint that you then need to make sure that every employee has access to a productive environment and plan for it. So forecasting is huge, is a huge part going forward, right? So planning for what kind of predicting the needs of the employee and making sure that you actually can provide the conditions to be productive.
Right. So I think a corporate real estate person needs to have a understanding of psychosocial motivation of human beings, and among other things.
You need a crystal ball, right? You need the crystal ball from now on.
Yeah, which regrettably most of them are rather cloudy, at least the ones I've ever had. But
yes, well, our goal is to make them more clear. So
that's right. But you're quite correct. I mean, the issue is work enablement. So corporate real estate, as we were discussing, a corporate real estate leader one time was concerned with getting a 10-year deal in the Wall Street area, for $70 a square foot with a $100 TI allowance, and make sure that the terms and conditions, and then that lease was locked away in a drawer for 10 years or 20 years, as the case may be, and move on to the next deal. But it's this how, where, and who is going to be doing work. What's the key to productivity for a particular position? You've heard the term personas, which has been popping up all over the place. So is somebody a collaborator, an enabler, a maven, as a individual contributor, and on and all these different kinds of job profiles. So it does take very, very close work with HR, and it also requires a new kind of HR, IT, and again, the corporate real estate person, and they need to come to the table with the facts, and know how to extract the value out of the facts to make the right kinds of decisions.
So you mentioned, this is a great point, the personas, right? And so it used to be that every role would have a certain persona or a certain way of using the space in the office. But I think going forward, what we'll see is actually one role would combine all these personas at different, or not all, but majority of these personas will kind of fluctuate during the day, right? You might want to, you're coming to the office and you want to spend some time being focused on your own tasks. You want to have some quiet environment for yourself. Then you switching to team mode, you're collaborating with your coworkers. It's a different environment, and you need some different amenities for that. And then you might want to go outside for, I don't know, some recreational activity, so that you can come back more productive, right? So all of this changes going to happen during the day, during the time you're spending in the office, and that's again additional friction point that you need to keep in mind.
Right. So an employee might flow through the office at different times of day, doing different things and having different needs. But in order to manage that, again, you need to have some mechanism to know where people are, how long they're there, perhaps what they're doing. And give us some kind of real life examples of response that you see at companies to what we've described as we said, as a great deal of complexity, right? And what are some real life examples of people kind of staring that complexity in the face and wrestling it down?
Well, I think you see this response, you see these examples in the way workplace experience apps are adopted, right? So there's a lot of solutions now on the market to help employees to book the space, to
Yeah.
book the room when needed, to have access to amenities on the office, understand what are the catering options, and so on and so on. Wayfinding. There's a lot of applications now for that, and it's great to see there's a lot of competition in the market. But and basically, when we talk to our clients or prospects, occupiers, they either have this project already in progress, or they already have the app working for employees, or they planning to procure this product, right? So this is the driver. The end user is the driver. And then on the other hand, using this kind of data, using some additional data points, data sources, to make decisions on a strategic level. This is obviously the something that real estate executives are focused on, right? So combining those two, I think that's where you have the response to these changes, to this transition.
Powerful, right?
Yep.
It is interesting. You talk about it. If I could use the term paradigm, it got overworked for a number of years. But employees can now decide more the terms of where and how they work, right? So there was an industrial model that a factory or a large office would be built in a particular place, and people would gravitate to that place and seek and find their employment there, often in a particular vertical, right? So employees are now saying, and companies are advertising, I think I saw this with Twitter, saying that, hey, if your company's not offering you flexibility, we can do that. So come work with us, because employees want that choice, and they've become used to that choice. And then data then helps the company kind of manage all that. It's interesting to me too, the irony perhaps, but the application of technology actually enhances the human experience and our emotional need to interact and connect with other people, right? So the technology, rather than isolating and separating, is a tool to bring this complexity together in a seamless and way that it can function well for the company and the employee both. It's much more, there's been a lot of discussion, and I see a lot of this come out on various sources about this discussion about using the term hybrid, and how many people are going to work from home, and how many people are going to be in collaboration space, and how many people are going to be at Starbucks, and how many people are coming to the office. But it's actually much, much more complicated than that. That's looking at this through a real estate place lens. It's bigger than place, isn't it?
Yeah. I think, going forward, if we talk about the future, we might even see the mobile offices, right? So you're saying all this kind of moving houses, right? So the house that you could take with you would be perfect conditions for living, but you can actually talk about the same technology for offices. So location will be not permanent anymore. You can actually you should be able to take your office with you whenever you go, and just pick your location and kind of have it done for several months maybe. So there's a lot of opportunities, I think, in the future for again using technology to add even more freedom, more flexibility, and more choices.
Maybe we could expound on it, explore this a little bit. But there's the famous line from Yogi Berra. He said it's very difficult to do forecasting. He said, especially in the future, right? But it's even difficult to describe today, right? It's so fluid. Let's really venture out onto a very dangerous limb. 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. I get up in the morning, my feet hit the floor, and I've got some sort of device maybe implanted in my head, or glasses of some sort, what's the workplace then in 20 years, bearing in mind that we're on a path of rapid acceleration. The technology, there's things beyond what we can even probably contemplate. You can probably more so than I, but
yeah,
but
it's a very hard task, right? So I think the nuances will be probably very different from what we now can imagine, but in my opinion, one of the maybe key criteria or key benefit that people will get in the workplace of the future, maybe 20 years from now, maybe even 10 years from now, is adaptability. So when you're coming to the building, when you're visiting your office, you should expect the experience that is tailored to you, to your needs now, right? So there's a balance, of course, with, but you don't want to give out too much data, right? You still want to have your privacy protected, but the environment, the workplace environment in particular, should be able to adapt to your needs. Coming back again to our point about personas and how they even changing for the same role over space of one day. When you in the future, when you're coming in and you want to focus on your particular tasks, you work on individual tasks, the environment should actually just adapt itself. You don't have to go elsewhere. It should be able to adapt itself. And same for teamwork and so on. So I think there will be a mix of virtual and physical, of course, right? So physical environment, sort of, where you can probably use the virtual tools, virtual collaboration, without even acknowledging that it is different from physical world, right? So this is another, I think, some advancement there. But I think for me the keyword is adaptability and flexibility. Of course, we're already on the way there. So
and of course it's the flexible, the adaptable that survive, right? And can prosper in really any environment, because we don't know what the future will be, but we do know it will change, right? So
so that's a very good point. Yes. So
that's the world
adapting to climate change, and still being able to work productively in whatever is around, what kind of environment is it outside of the office. I think this will be a big function of the building.
And that's the first time that those words have come up in this conversation, but I don't think we can't diminish the significance of the need to address it, and the role that the corporate office and workplace and has on that issue in terms of our infrastructure, physical and buildings and transportation and so on are major drivers of that. So that is one of the areas around which I think flexibility is a new imperative, and becomes even more clear on that every day. So anyway, maybe now that we have tackled the future, probably would be a good place to end the conversation, though we could certainly continue for a long time. But kind of any last words you'd like to share with us before we part company today?
I think so. This was a perfect point that you just brought up: sustainability and climate change, and the connection, and the kind of the contribution that we can make by making real estate more efficient, making buildings better for the workplace goals, but also for the world. This is our mission, really, at Basking. All our founders, we came together for this particular goal, to make buildings better in terms of sustainability, office buildings in particular. So we actually started with energy efficiency first. So using occupancy data to improve the energy consumption of the building. The goal was to make sure that if there is no one in the office, there should be minimal. There should be minimal energy consumption.
Right.
So tying that to the occupancy level,
Mm-hmm.
and over time we also decided, okay, we need to actually help to improve real estate costs. Right, there are huge costs out there when you have an office that is not utilized. When you're paying rent, you're paying for all these utilities, and the people are not there. So adapting to the real time occupancy, it's a big deal, and it contributes to sustainability goal, of course.
Yes, it will, and I think this is going to be a major influence on corporate decisions. Customers demanding it, employees demanding it, compliance and reporting. These are things that are now in the appear in annual reports. And
these are strategic goals, right? And that's what RefineRE is delivering. That's what we are helping to deliver with our insights.
Right.
But in the end, it ties to the corporate real estate strategy as well.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and we'll stay in touch. We'll do this again in 20 years and see how well we did with our predictions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, thanks. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.